The Greater Centerville Historians organized in the year 2000. The purpose of the organization is to preserve the history of the Township of Centerville, Cleveland and surrounding area. Gerald O'Neill, Charlie Bauer, Richard Wiegand, and myself, Kathleen Sixel, were the founding members. In 1831, the territory south of Green Bay was sold to the U.S. government by the Native Americans who had title to the land. The consideration was the promise of a reservation in another state. The Township of Centerville was established in 1850. The township had a village called Centerville. The reason for the hamlet's original name of Centerville was, in the days of the Indians, there was a trail along Lake Michigan between Manitowoc and Sheboygan. This heavenly spot was exactly at the halfway mark, so the early white man gave it the name Centerville. In 1849, the village of Centerville was surveyed and laid out in lots and blocks. The village of Centerville was renamed Hika when the Postmaster General informed the village leaders that another Centerville was located in the state. When it became time for Centerville to be renamed, a judge in Manitowoc by the name of Albert Schmidt would take kids hiking. The judge said, "You can't call a town hiking, so why not make it Hika?" Thus, the village of Centerville became Hika. In the early years, Centerville had the vision of becoming a lake port. To encourage ships to dock there, 2 piers were built into Lake Michigan. Many German immigrants arrived by schooners, and the village began to grow. The village had a brick factory, stores, schools, a Lutheran and a Catholic church, mill, saloons, blacksmith shop, and a fire department, and a brewery. When the brewery was built, the settlement began to flourish. But when fire destroyed the brewery, the largest industry, there was no longer a need for the harbor facilities. So ended this chapter of the development of Hika. 2 miles west of Hika, another settlement known as St. Wendel began to grow. It had a Catholic church, a general store with a connected dance hall, and a post office was also located in the complex, a funeral parlor, and at one time a motel. With the clearing of the forest, tilling of the land began. This prompted the exporting of lumber and grains. The farmers of Centerville looked forward to the building of a railway since they had a serious problem transporting their products. In 1873, the Milwaukee, Lakeshore, and Western Railroad was built between the settlements of Hika and St. Wendel and was named Centerville Station. In 1880, Centerville Station was renamed Cleveland after President Grover Cleveland. Cleveland, at that point in time, owes its growth to the fact that the Township of Centerville was a rich farming community, and farmers for miles around would bring products to be shipped by rail or ship. The village of Cleveland had several grocery stores, a furniture store, a funeral parlor, several saloons, Lutheran church, hardware stores, several gas stations, newspaper, photographer studio, several car dealerships, cheese factory, several feed mills, livestock yard, and lumber yards. The biggest business was the Cleveland Co-op, which offered many types of services. With the failing of grain crops, the farmers began dairy farming. With the abundance of milk, another industry began, cheese and butter making. Local cheese factories dotted the countryside. One-room schools were usually built near the cheese factories, so children would have a ride to school when farmers brought their milk. In 1958, Hika, St. Wendel, and Cleveland incorporated into the village of Cleveland. In 1968, the Cleveland Elementary School was built. The Township of Centerville has seen many farming changes, but dairy farming is still the primary vocation. Today, Cleveland is known as the seat of Lakeshore Technical College, which offers an educational alternative to 4-year colleges. An ancient proverb states, When an old person dies, a library burns to the ground. These words were the inspiration for organizing the Greater Centerville Historians. We hope to preserve as many memories as possible.
Good evening, everybody, and it's so nice to see all of you. We're pretty laid back, and we only have a few rules. Number one, when you want to speak, please raise your hand so Jerry can get to you, and always use your full name. Refrain from using nicknames when you talk about people, and also don't visit while Jerry is videoing it because it picks up in the video. The poster I had restored, and it is from Tourist Inn. I got it from Jeannie Stady the night she did her presentation, and it was all in pieces, and it was real brittle, and it was just falling apart. So I took it to a Great Lakes company, but they couldn't pull it through the roller for me to get a copy. So then I took it to the framing shop. They suggested that, and they did a method called dry gluing. And they put the pieces and everything together, and it really turned out nice, and we're going to let it here. And we hope LTC will accept it as part of the Cleveland room. And the year isn't on there, and the year is 1917 when this poster was used. So, okay, should we start introductions? And again, thank you for Soaring Eagle family for coming and doing this presentation. And of course, we're the Greater Centerville Historians. And it's April 13th, 2009. Okay?
Okay.
I'm Julie Maurer and I'm from Newton.
Thank you.
I'm Kelsey Maurer and I'm from Newton.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Cheryl Bauer, and I'm from Newton.
Audrey Ertl from St. Nazianz.
Thank you, Audrey.
Alice Mathias, Cleveland. Irene Dine, Cleveland.
Thank you.
Willard Mathias, Cleveland.
Thank
Marie Rosenbauer from Newton.
you. Thank you.
Jeff Elson from Newton.
Lisa Elson from Newton.
Thank you.
Frederick Jacoby from Manitowoc.
Paul Jacoby from Cleveland.
Thank you.
Kathy Wagner from Cleveland.
Dolores Kress from Cleveland. Walter Kress from Cleveland.
Thank you, Wallace.
John Wiegand, Town of Centerville.
Thank you.
Elsbeth Yeager, Sheboygan.
Thank you.
Julie Maurer from Newton.
Thank you.
Jim Fitzgerald from Osmond.
Okay, thank you.
Sandy Fitzgerald from Osmond.
Thank you.
K. Shell Guandiola.
Victor Shell Guandiola.
Earl Ziegler, County Truck XX Newton.
Rick Firestorm, Town Meeting.
Alvin Yaney, Cleveland.
Kathy Yaney, Cleveland.
Edith Lindsay, Cleveland.
Marie Pipper, Cleveland.
Selma Vogel, Cleveland.
Charlie Bauer from Newton.
Okay, and Jerry O'Neill from the town of Newton also. And I am your videographer for the evening, and I guess at this point we can perhaps start with the presentation.
And thank you to the Greater Centerville Historians for asking us to come and share our story. I'm sure a lot of the audience still has ties to dairy and to farming, but we find that a lot fewer people can say that today, and so we try to get out and share our story as much as we can. I do welcome anyone who has questions as we go along to please ask them. I think it makes more sense, and when a question comes up, if you just raise your hand, we'll get Jerry to catch you on the camera, and any questions I'd be happy to answer. So this is Soaring Eagle Dairy today. My parents, Jim and Sandy, are on the left. The young girls here in the front. Oh, look at that. This is my family, my husband and our two girls. My sister Kelly, her husband, and their three children, and then my sister Stacy and her husband Jeremy. The three girls are partners with my mom and dad in the operation. We all kind of took different routes, I would say. Kelly, after high school, she went to short course at Madison and started on the dairy. Actually, that's all she's ever done, as has Stacy. I did have about 11 years at Kohler Company before coming back to the dairy, but that's our motley crew today. So if we go back to in history a little bit, Charlie, your battery, I think. But that's okay. I think I'll be all right. That's all right. So us three girls, again, Jim is our father and Sandy our mom. Sandy Strahl was her maiden name. Her parents were Herb and Veronica Strahl, and they farmed, I guess what would be in the town of Newton. They were up on South Union Road, just a little bit north of Newton Road. So she grew up on a farm as well. But then Dad and my grandpa was John Fitzgerald, and my grandma was Jenny Krall. I've got a little bit of, look at that, a spelling error. A little bit of history on Grandma and Grandpa Krall, and we'll get into that, but they have some history in dairy as well. Grandpa had a career in milk production, or milk processing. And then Grandpa Fitzgerald's parents were Simon and Nellie. They were both locally born, town of Mimi, and in Liberty, great-grandma Barnes was born. And then actually, from Grandpa Fitzgerald, great-grandpa Fitzgerald, I was able to trace it back to Ireland on my great-great-grandmother's side. And the first of the Fitzgeralds came to the U.S. in 1948 due to the potato famine. They spent some time in Ithaca, New York, before moving to this area. Few blanks and things where we didn't have all of the information, but this is the the things we did have. So my great-grandparents, Simon and Nellie, that's a picture of them. Simon was born on the homestead, and the homestead is where my uncles currently farm, and that is a mile west of Highway 42 on F, and their dairy is Fitz Pine Dairy, still in operation today by my uncles Bob and Jay Fitzgerald and their families. They also, Simon had a brother named Joe who was married to Mary All, and their farmstead was across the road, actually in the home today occupied by the Elfsons that are here visiting with us tonight. And after the Alls, it was purchased by the Hibbards, and Harry Hibbard operated that farm later on. This was a great exercise for me in that I have a whole new appreciation for life from my great-grandparents and my grandparents, but especially my grandfather. My great-grandfather Simon died when he was 39 years old. He had taken a trip, I think it was to Spring Valley, I believe he took some wheat or something, and it was a couple-day trip or a day-long trip, and he came back, and as my grandfather's writings say, he was chilled to the bone. And it was the onset or the development of pneumonia, which eventually took his life. He died, I think, within the week. But he left my great-grandmother Nellie to raise 6 children. The oldest was 9, and that was my grandfather, John. And then the youngest was my great-aunt, Rosie. She was Rosie Herzog, and she was 6 months of age when her father passed. This is another picture of Simon. And then this is a picture of the homestead. So this was Grandma and Grandpa Fitzgerald's home. The picture was taken in 1942, and I remember them living there until, I would say it was the mid-'80s when they built a house off the farm.
If I may interrupt, what road was that on, please?
That's on Highway F, and
Okay.
it's just a quarter of a mile west of Highway 42.
Thank you.
And then these are some of the outbuildings, and Dad and I went through these just today. So this was the barn that housed the livestock, and we'll get into the animals that they had. There's a chicken coop over here, and then a machine shed here. These buildings, well, the chicken coop is gone. Part of this building is still standing today, but it's been modified quite a bit. And actually this shed is still there as well. I mentioned my great-grandfather on my grandmother's side, Ed and Rose Krall. And Grandpa Krall, he served in World War I. That is a picture on their wedding day. I learned that if you were married in the winter, you didn't wear a gown back in the day, so that's why she's wearing the suit. He graduated from what my grandfather in his writings referred to as dairy school. We're not sure if that was sort of like the short course that's offered today at University of Madison, or if it was something more geared toward cheese making, since there were so many cheese factories and things back in those days. But after dairy school, he was a cheesemaker in Grimm's and in Clark's Mills, and then he served as a field man for the Nestle Bottling or Milk Company in Valders for 38 years. He retired at the age of 65 from the White House Milk Company in Manitowoc, and Grandpa Krall was 97 when he passed. He was always, I remember him doing little cartwheels and us kids jumping all over him, and well into his 60s and probably pushing 70. Has anybody here seen this book? I think this is the group that probably would have. But Mom and Dad had this book, and it was in a pile of a collection of historical things and news clippings and things, and thought, I wonder what this is, just some interesting reading, or I didn't know. But then in the inside, there's a part where they did some research for the publishing of this book, and my great-grandfather contributed to it. So it reads, in 1916, the Wisconsin Condensed Milk Company built a milk processing plant in Valders. It was sold a few years later to Nestle. It ceased operation in 1954, and in 1959, the plant was purchased by the Allen B. Smith Milling Company. It goes on, and then it says, the operations of the company are remembered by 94-year-old Ed Krall of Valders. Mr. Krall was the owner of a cheese factory in Clark's Mills across the street from the Morgan grocery store, which is now at the Pinecrest Historical Village. And then it goes on to talk about how Grandpa spent his entire life in the milk business and witnessed many changes. Some were accepted willingly and others were not. So I thought that was interesting that great-grandpa Krall helped with part of the writings of that book. My grandfather John Fitzgerald, he died as a result of a car accident in 1988, and about a year and a half before he passed, he had started to do some writings, which I am so grateful for, because we've learned so many things about his life, his growing up, our ancestry, and so forth. But I pulled a few interesting things out and just noted them, but in it he says that life was very hard from 1928 to 1936. So not only had his father passed shortly before that, but it was the Depression. There were some hard cropping years, there were hard dairy years, and life was just hard without things like electricity and all the things that we take for granted. After his father passed, his mother hired someone to do what he referred to in his writing as the man's work. So I think the kids helped with a lot of the feeding the chickens, and I know Grandpa would take the milk to the milk plant before school and some of those things, but the man's work, or the real hard labor, was done by somebody that had been hired. The pay for him was 50 cents a day in the winter months and $1 per day for the rest of the year. And they would milk by hand 14 to 15 animals in the spring and through the fall of the year, and then it would just be 4 or 5 in winter. And Grandpa in his writings commented that he didn't understand that, because you always were paid more for your milk in winter than you were in summer, so why wouldn't you make more milk in the winter? I thought that was interesting. In addition to the milking herd, they usually had 4 or 5 heifers, 6 calves, a couple of sows, some hogs, 1,000 chickens, or 1,000. That would be today's numbers. 100 chickens, and of course some horses to operate the farm as well. Oops. Grandpa talked in his writings about the Great Depression. And I love this quote: anyone who had gone through the Depression had a built-in caution the rest of his life. And I think there are a lot of people today that could have used a little bit of that caution, considering the state of our financing industry and the economy and so forth. Grandpa talked about how during that time there was no unemployment, no Social Security, no welfare, no food stamps, and I added bailouts. I'm thinking nobody bailed out back in that day. And then he talked of how during that really difficult time there came a drought in which they had 3-foot high corn stalks that had no cobs, and so not only did they not have the money, but they didn't have the feed to feed their animals. So it was a very tough time. Howard's Grove Bank failed. Again, no bailout. Nobody came to Howard's Grove Bank's rescue. And my great-grandmother and others who were sending who did banking there, they lost a milk check. The deposits weren't guaranteed. There was no FDIC. Grandpa Fitzgerald graduated from high school in Howard's Grove. He started in Manitowoc. My uncle graduated from Lincoln in Manitowoc, and this would be my great uncle, I'm sorry. And some of my great aunts went to the, I believe it was a convent in Green Bay. And it was interesting for me that whether you received an education or not depended on if somebody was driving past and was able to give you a ride to school. So his early years, somebody was headed to Manitowoc and he caught a ride and went to Lincoln for a year. But then later on that transportation fell through or didn't exist anymore, so he caught a ride with somebody going the other way, and he actually got his high school diploma from Howard's Grove. Grandpa talked about how he early in the morning would haul the milk to the Rhodes Cheese Factory in Osmond. Charlie?
I got a question on that Rhodes. Now, the Rhodes Cheese Factory that I'm aware of was located in Northeim. Was there two Rhodes Cheese Factory?
I don't know.
Right. Rhodes was in...
Hold it. Okay, we have a gentleman here with a question. Go right ahead, please.
Frederick Jacoby. Well, cheesemakers move from time to time from one factory to another. And so that's likely the answer here. Because
okay.
And when I was a kid, then the roadies were operating in Northeim, but that's what happened. Cheesemakers moved.
Okay, okay. And I would think he hadn't hauled it to Northeim if there was a factory in Osmond, because that was just a mile down the road. He talked of how their horses were maybe older and slower, and their wagon was a little on the rickety side, so he was always a bit humbled when the faster horses and wagons would pass him by as he was going. But he would haul the milk to the factory in Osmond before school, and then he'd bring home the whey to feed the pigs. If you didn't get to the factory early in the day, then you didn't get the whey for your pigs. You have a question, Jerry?
Okay, we have a gentleman here who had a question.
Well, I just heard, no, I don't have a question.
First, I need
Can
your
I
name.
add something?
I need your name, too.
Frederick Jacoby.
Thank you.
I just was reminded, the tavern that was on the north end of Osmond, which was Don Hillstrom for many years, I don't know what's in there now, for sure. How many know where Hillstrom's bar was? All right, that was a cheese factory. And
No, it was the other one.
Osterlots was the cheese factory.
Which one?
Osterlots.
One on the other end of town.
That'd be Goldie's. Goldie's factory.
Okay.
Running mooses in.
All right, could be. I always thought it was the one that was Hillstrom's.
No.
Close enough. And my wife's grandfather, Ernst Sigelko, ran that before he moved to Edwards. He was there any number of years.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Kathy Sixel, and where was the cheese factory located? On the corner now, where that plant is?
That would be when I read about hauling milk by horse and buggy to the cheese factory in Osmond, I assumed it was the one down in the corner by Point Creek, because in my memories that's the only place I ever remember there being a cheese factory. But if there was another factory in Osmond, it could have been any. I don't know. Dad, do you know?
Okay, pertaining to the factory.
What?
Pertaining to the factory?
To the factory?
Yes, the one in the corner.
Kathy Sixel, and at one time the cheese factory on the corner would be not F but Point Creek Road was owned by Norbert and Millie Schmidt. And
Okay.
today it's the Metco company that has their offices in Cleveland and their plant out there.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, we'll move on. This is just a sample of Grandpa's writings and one of my favorite stories. And it reads, when I started, and the date cut off, but I believe it was written in November of 87 or 88. And he titles it I Remember. And it reads, when I started plowing with a walking plow and 3 horses in the late cold fall, I would start plowing as soon as chairs and breakfast were done. Nights were freezing, and it was a race to finish plowing before freeze-up. About 10 o'clock, Mother would walk out to the field with lunch, 2 fried egg sandwiches still hot, and a jar of coffee. This tasted as good as dinner served at the best restaurant. I suppose she was trying to encourage an 18-year-old. You know, and I think of my generation and how much would anybody my age appreciate 2 fried egg sandwiches and a cup of coffee for lunch. And we certainly wouldn't compare it to the best restaurant. So I find it interesting that at this point, Grandpa would have been 70, I think, almost 70 or just 70, that he would have that recollection at 70 of that good egg sandwich, and yeah, how much he appreciated that at 18. Grandpa talked about in 1938 they planted an extra 10 acres to pay for electricity. It was their intention. They were going to do a little cash cropping, so they had the money to have the electricity put in. They had a great crop, as he writes, and it was shucked in the field. The threshing machine arrived on Saturday, but they decided to wait till Monday. The threshing crew had been at it for several weeks, and they had needed a day off. So Monday came, and it rained, and it rained on and off for about a week, and the barley began to sprout. They didn't have the 3-day or 7-day or month-long forecasting that we have today. And so as a result, it was 3 years until it was 1941 before they were able to get electricity.
Wow.
These are some of the stories that I got from Dad that he recalled Grandpa saying. And Grandpa used to say that if you were going to try and start that 1930-something Fordson tractor, it didn't pay to even start it unless you were going to use it all day, because you know this would have been early in the day of gas motors, and it must have been a bugger to get running. In 1946, Grandpa from Thomas Brothers Implement in Cleveland bought a tractor. And this was right after the war, and they were just starting to produce tractors again. And so he bought a 1946 new Farmall M tractor. The kicker was they had this quack digger that they'd been trying to get rid of for quite some time, and they'd only sell him the tractor if he took the quack digger too. So that's a picture of a similar piece of equipment. And the way Dad explains, you know, because I have never seen a quack digger work, or even, you know, I can only guess what it's intended to do. But in the fall, after the corn came off, they would go through and it would pull up any of the quack grass or quack from the field, and it would sort of lay it on top so it hopefully would die off. And a few weeks later, it'd start to green up again, so you'd have to go out and run through with the quack digger again. And then, lo and behold, in spring you planted your corn and the quack came up anyway, so you had to cultivate. So, yeah, a lot different than the way we do things today.
Question.
Charlie has a question.
Yes, sir.
Charlie Bauer. The question I had, does anybody from the Cleveland area here know where the Thomas Brothers was located in the Cleveland area here? If you could give us a location on the camera, would be nice.
Okay, thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
There's Walter Kress.
Thank you, Walter.
Thomas Brothers used to be table hardware. It's right next to Dr. Reinert's office, right on Washington Street.
Okay.
Right across from where the warehouse still is.
Yep. Very good. Did you ever work for them?
Not really, no.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I drove their truck.
You did drive the truck. Very good. Thank you. You got a young lady. She'd like to identify herself, please.
I'm Irene Dine, and I worked for Thomas Brothers for 12 years. I remember her talking about the tractors. When the Farmall M came out, everybody wanted one of those because that was really bigger than the Farmall H.
Yes. Yep.
And there was a lineup. Whoever came next in line got the next tractor.
Wow.
So I worked there from 48 to 59.
Okay. I got a question for you. Did you sell any quack diggers?
We must have sold one.
Thank you, Irene.
In his writings, Grandpa Fitzgerald also talked about what he referred to as the greatest inventions. And I think at the top of the list was electricity, the tractor and the gas engine, the electric fencer. And again, I often don't think of, well, I wonder what it was like back in the day when they had the bulls running with the cows, but they didn't have electric fences, so when the bull turned on you, the bull turned on you and he was coming. So the electric fence was a great invention according to Grandpa. The quack digger, herbicide, pesticide, and fertilizer, artificial breeding, and the milk machine, of course. I can't fathom not having a milk machine. So I put together a little timeline of milking cows. Dad kind of helped me with this. So in the 1930s, that would be when Grandpa had just gotten out of high school, they were milking 15 cows by hand. In the 1950s, they were milking about 30 cows, and at that time they actually had a vacuum line running through the barn. So they began using milk machines. And then the milk machine would put the milk in a catch bucket, which would then have to be carried to the milk house and poured into milk cans. In 1956, they installed a bulk tank with a cooler. So, really helped to keep that milk cold. I would think that makes a huge difference. In 1962, they added a dumping station to transport the milk from the barn to the milk house. And as it was explained to me, is that was sort of a catch bucket that had a hose that ran. I said, Dad, did that thing run right over the gutter before? Pretty much, he said. So you no longer had to carry the milk cans, but now you had this hose that you had to make sure was kept clean. So as the person in charge of milk quality on our farm, I kind of appreciate that a little bit. And then in 1970 was when, at that point, Dad had graduated high school and was entering the partnership with Grandpa Fitz. And they built a parlor with a pipeline. So at that point, the milk was transported by solid pipe. So now I have kind of the next generation and my dad's history and some of his memories. Dad graduated in 1968, 66. That was the first time, no. And after high school, he attended UW-Madison for their dairy short course. That is a 4-month program, is that right?
November to March.
From November to March of each year. It's still offered today, and like I said earlier, my sisters have both attended that program as well. And then he returned to what is today Fitzpine Dairy and became a partner with his dad, John. In 1970, they underwent a pretty major expansion for the day. They got up to 150 cows. They had 330 total head with the livestock on the site, and they cropped about 550 acres. They milked in a parlor, which was a double 8. There were eight cows in a herringbone fashion on each side, and then the cows were housed in a free stall. Some of the automation, of course, is starting to come in at this time, and they had automated feeding, and I'll explain that a little bit later. And the barn that they built was a slatted floor barn. So the pit for the waste was right underneath the cow housing. This is a picture of that expansion in 1970. And so here we have that existing, or that first barn that Grandpa Simon, great-grandpa Simon would have built. This is the addition of, this is sort of an office and a milk house area here, and then the 3 stalls in the back. And so it's just an overshot of that as it's being built. This is a news article from 1975. So shortly after that expansion, they were Farm of the Week. And the newspapers had come out and taken some photos. This is my Grandpa Fitzgerald with, I'm sure, one of his favorite cows. And my Uncle Kevin in the milking parlor. And then, I know this is not a great picture, but it's what you get when you take a newspaper and try to put it on a computer. So this is the feed conveyor, and it would feed a pen of cows on either side, and then there's another one of these down over here. But the feed would be loaded onto that conveyor in a mixing room back here, and then it would go overhead and it would drop into that feeding area. And then, of course, in these floors, there's slats so that the waste all falls through. This is an interesting story. In that same newspaper article is a picture of Grandpa John and my dad Jim. And I'm going to read it over here because I think it's easier. But the article reads, "To tell you the truth, we probably have too big a farm for just the two of us, Fitzgerald said. We get up at 4:15 year-round. During the summer, we work until 8 p.m. and we're done around 6:30 during the winter. Jim and his father operate a farm that under plow has about 530 acres of land. Oh, it says winter is the time he catches up on repairs and odd jobs that there isn't time for during the summer. Last week, the Fitzgerald father and son team were busy cutting away brush and growth along their fences." And the interesting part of this is this past winter, we spent a lot of time cutting away trees and brushes from actually the same stretch of land. It just keeps coming back. So some of the things haven't changed so much in dairy over the years.
Okay, we're on.
Okay, some of Dad's, well, and I guess this would be more of the history of Dad's farm career. In 1982, he decided to go off on his own, and he built a tie stall barn. So in that barn, the cows all had their own stall, and we would go from cow to cow and milk them. The name of the dairy was Fitzhaven Dairy. We milked 60 cows. We had 145 head total on the farm, and ran about 214 acres. In the beginning, family did all of the milkings, all of the cropping, all of the work that needed to be done. And then eventually we got up to 90 cows, and at that point we'd hired in some help to assist us. But we would switch out half the herd during milking so that we could get the extra 30 cows into the barn and milk. This is a picture of the oldest barn at the original Fitzhaven site where I live today. It's also a picture of Charlie Bauer's next project. He's going to make a little barn like this. Maybe not. I made that up. The home where I live today in Centerville, right next to the dairy where my parents started their farming operation, they had purchased from Walter Schutte, was the owner before us, and it's my understanding that it was homesteaded by
the Logans.
The Logans. The name slipped me, but and so that is a mile. Our dairy today is a mile east of Highway 42 on Highway F. And this is the dairy, pretty much as it looks yet today. But this is that tie stall barn operation that my parents built. And then this is that original barn that was seen in the previous picture. In 1997, my dad partnered with my sister, who would have finished high school and had been on the farm for a couple years. And then there was another non-family couple who had farmed with us for a few years. They all joined forces and they formed Soaring Eagle Dairy. In 97, a double 12 parallel parlor was built and a 400 cow freestall barn. It combined all of our cows and all of the pieces and people of the business and built the new facilities. In 2005, my sister Stacy and I, we came to the dairy and entered as partners, and at that time we added a second freestall barn and added some additional stalls into our parlor as well. So I asked my dad what the greatest inventions were in his dairy career, and TMR stands for Total Mixed Ration. And so a total mixed ration mixer was pretty critical in balancing rations. When I was a kid, I remember when you fed the cows, you filled up the one cart with haylage, and you filled up the other cart with some high moisture corn. And then you walked around with your bucket that had some protein in it, another bucket that had some mineral in, and it was either one scoop or two of everything, or one shovelful or two, and you just sort of layered it in there for the cow. Science has taught us that to really get the maximum performance out of a dairy cow, they have to have so much of all the right ingredients. And at my house, if I tell my kids they can go have a snack, if there's a choice between a Twinkie and a bag of carrots, they usually take the Twinkie. And our cows do the same thing. They'll go for not necessarily a balanced diet. So a TMR mixer is what has really pushed milk production from where it was when my dad started farming to where it is today. The milking parlor has changed. Things have become much more automated. Freestall barns, even though we had them in the 70s, they're different today. We've learned a lot about cow comfort and how important it is to have the beds be comfortable for the cows so that they go lay down, so they're conserving their energy for making milk, for milk production. So today's freestall barns have bigger stalls and we use sand. I don't think my grandpa would have ever thought to have his cows lay on sand, but it's one of the things we've learned. Computers are critical in dairy today, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Feed bunkers have made the whole cropping part of the dairy industry a lot more efficient. It's much easier the way we do it today to pile the feed and seal it with plastic than it was back when you had to blow it up into the silo. And I think those blowers were probably more trouble than they were ever worth. I remember days where somebody wasn't happy about the blower not working right. And then equipment has changed. Certainly they're bigger, they're more efficient, and they can do a lot more work than the Farmall M did back in 1946. So this is milk production. In the 60s, Dad said that they probably got about 35 pounds of milk per cow per day. In the 70s, they were right at about 50. And this week, we were averaging about 89 pounds per cow. And I think a lot of that is the result of properly feeding those cows. This is the TMR mixer, our former one. It's retired now, but all of the ingredients that make up that cow's balanced diet get dumped in there and mixed together. So every biteful that the cow takes is balanced. And this is our dairy today. Again, this is the that original barn that we saw being raised. And then off in the front, you can't really see it very well, would have been the tie stall barn that Dad built in the 80s. This was the original barn that was built in 97, along with the milking parlor. This is called our special needs barn. All of our dry cows, any cows that are sick or off feed, are housed in special pens in this barn. This was added in 2000. This addition also let us grow internally a little bit before we were ready to build this barn. This was built in 2005. And our latest addition were these two small calf barns, and they are just over a year old. Our calf program, calves are housed in this barn from 0 to about 2 months. During that time, they're fed pasteurized waste milk. So any milk that's not fit for sale, we collect and we pasteurize it to feed to those baby calves. And then they move into this barn where they're group housed. They're housed together in there, fed grain and forages and things. And then at 5 months, our calves are loaded on a semi, and they go out to Colorado where they're raised. So they're raised on dirt in a dry lot environment. It was kind of a long story why our calves are in Colorado, but we looked at doing something here, but it got really expensive because here you have to build these big, huge farm buildings. And animals really transport well, so we send them out there, and then they come back to us about 2 months before they're ready to have a calf of their own and enter the milking herd.
We have a gentleman here who'd like to identify himself and provide a question to start off our second half, please. Go right ahead.
John Wiegand. Some fairly good-sized farmer told my sister that right now with the milk prices, they're losing like $25,000 a month. I was just wondering, how are you handling that? Or do you have to change anything, or can you just ride it out till it gets better, or what?
Thank you. Okay, we have a question on the floor, and this young lady is going to attempt to answer it. Go right ahead, please.
That's a very good question and comment, John. We are back to milk prices that I think were common in the 70s, and you saw once in a while in the 80s. I think we saw them a few times in the 90s, and they're back, but all of our inputs are not back to where they were in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So it is a period of, I would venture to guess that everybody that's producing milk today is losing money. It's the case on our dairy. I don't know, the numbers off the top of my head. They're starting to turn around and they're starting to get a little bit better, but we're still losing money. It goes back to what Grandpa Fitz said in his writings, that if you lived through the Depression, you had a built-in sense of caution. And so, Dad luckily has been through some of this before, so part of that caution is during the good times, you stash some away, just like we do in our homes. You stash some away so that you have those funds to tap into to make it through the tough times. So personally, I don't believe in bailouts. I believe in learning from Grandpa and Dad on how to be responsible and how to plan to make it through the tough times. You know, and then you make it through your reserves and you go to the bank, and you know those things are happening. And unfortunately, there are dairymen who may not make it through. It's a tough period.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome. So, more about Soaring Eagle Dairy. This is our parlor. We have a parallel parlor, which means the cow walks in and makes a complete right angle into her slot. There's 16 cows on each side, and we do all of our work between her back legs. There's different types and styles of parlors. We like this one because when those new cows come into the parlor and they're a little antsy and their legs kick forward, we're standing behind them. So we kind of like that. This is a picture of the cow in the front. She's standing there. She's giving milk. We have 3 people on a milking shift. There are 2 people in the parlor harvesting milk at all times. And then one person goes out and brings the next group, usually it's 100 cows at a time, to the parlor. Those 3 people will milk 900 cows in 7 hours. All of this stuff up here is a computerized keypad that identifies the cow, and it identifies how much milk she's given. And some dairies have that technology, that equipment, some don't. But for us, it's important. It's how we manage our cows. If the cow's not right, something's going on with her. The first thing that happens is she stops eating. When she stops eating, she stops producing milk. So it's that technology that allows us to manage 900 plus cows. These are the cows at the feed bunk eating their TMR, their perfectly balanced diet. And the bottom picture is a picture of the freestall barn. The cow chooses to eat, lie down, get a drink of water. They move about freely in their pen. Their beds, as I mentioned before, have sand in them. We add sand to those beds about every 5 days. And the manure system that we have has the waste as it leaves the barn traveling over a very flat concrete slab where all the sand settles out. We clean it up, we stack it, it drains, it dries out, and we reuse that sand. So that's kind of a different way of doing things than Grandpa did. We didn't start in '97 with sand. We had put what we thought was ideal for a cow, a big rubber-filled mattress, and we put a little bit of sawdust on there. We thought that would be the best thing for the cows. But we found in our herd that our cows' hocks would get scratched up and sore, swollen. And so that prompted us to make this change where we use sand. We don't have those same problems anymore. And it's done a lot. Our cows produce milk, more milk. They stick around longer. They live. They're healthier. So that's kind of part of our facilities. Of course, inside they're protected from the sun, the wind, the rain. A lot of people think cows should be out on the pasture, and that's nice. It's a pretty picture when you're driving by. But it's wouldn't have been so nice this winter or when it's 95 degrees out or raining. We do drop curtains in our barns that allows the fresh air to circulate through. And then on the hot days in the barn, we have a sprinkler system. And so there's a water pipe that runs, can't quite make it out here, but it runs right about here on those cows above their feed alley. And in the hot months, I believe it's every 15 minutes that sprinkler will put out a mist of water to cool the cows off, and that runs for about three minutes to keep the cows cool. Today we are running about 1,400 acres of land, some of which is owned and some is rented from neighboring farms. We do a rotation of corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and winter wheat. We grow all of our own forage and some of our grains. The grains, it always depends on what kind of year you have. In a dry year, if your yield is low, then everything goes into forage. And we purchase our grains, but in a good year, then we'll have some grain left over to provide for our own needs. And we do our cropping operations with my uncles, my dad's brothers, Jay and Bob, who are just a mile down the road. They own about half of the cropping equipment, and we own the other half, and we do all of our cropping together. I'm sure this is my mother on her favorite tractor. She is the queen mower on the dairy. She knocks down almost every acre of hay that we have. And that's just the front view, and then a back view of that alfalfa being cut down.
How many feet do you swallow hay at one time?
The question Charlie had was how many feet of hay do we swat down at a time? And the answer is 24?
28.
28 feet.
Oh, man.
Julie, just go back to that last slide.
So, yeah, I guess I could point out, is it 28 divided by 3, roughly?
Yeah.
So there's one deck mounted on the front end of the tractor, and then there's 2 decks mounted on the back end of the tractor. And those 3 decks combined will knock down 28 feet of alfalfa at a time.
Want to mention where that mower is made?
That is a Pottinger mower made in Austria. Dad had the privilege of taking a trip to Austria. The company, we had one of the first Pottinger mowers in this area, and so of course they want everybody happy, and he got a trip to Austria to the question is, how do you get parts? No, and I think that's a great question. And so even though it was a Pottinger mower built in Austria, there's a dealer local now. And, you know, you go through some of that, I think, early on where it's tough and they need to know what to have on hand. But I don't think we've had any real issue.
No.
Another
Go ahead, please.
Paul Jacoby.
Thank you.
When road traveling, that fold up, the 2 back ones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A question on the floor pertaining to the equipment for road travel.
And that is correct, Paul. The front is not really any wider than the tractor, so that one stays in place. But these 2 wings do fold up. And they actually are, I don't know, maybe 3-4 feet taller than the tractor when they're folded up, but they don't take up a whole lot of room on the road. It's quite easy to drive this mower on the roadway.
I have a question. There used to be crimping of hay. Do they still do that?
Crimping is the same as conditioning, right? Right, I'm getting the nod.
Okay.
And this does have a conditioner built in, so
Okay.
no, it does not
Have a
conditioner.
That, please.
Jim Fitzgerald. Yeah, the mower, rather than a reciprocating sickle, has a series of discs mounted under it, and each disc has 2 knives. I guess you would say they're similar to a section that would be on a sickle mower. So these spin at a real high speed, and that's what actually cuts the hay. they've actually, they say how do they say that? What goes around comes around. Well, years ago, we did not condition or crimp the hay. When I was a kid growing up, you just cut the hay and hope to dry it. Then they found out it by conditioning it, which is breaking up the stem, it would dry faster. But back then we were making all dry hay. So now they did research and they found that if you do not condition it, it actually dries quicker from 80% moisture, the moisture that it is standing in the field, down to about 55% moisture where we want to chop it for haylage. So they've kind of rediscovered this thing, and now they find out that for the way we harvest our feed now, it is better to harvest it or cut it without conditioning. One more comment on that. That front unit is mounted on a front 3-point hitch, similar to the 3-point hitch on the back of the tractor that holds the 2 units in the back. And the American manufacturers do not make a front 3-point hitch. Also, we needed a PTO shaft in the front to power that front unit. So that unit was made in France. So I think our U.S. ag engineers are maybe a little bit behind. And Julie will have another picture coming up in a minute showing how we merge the hay. Oh, there it is. So the machine on both of the upper pictures, that picks up 30 feet of hay. That machine is 30 feet wide and moves it to one side. Then when we get to the end of the field, we turn around, we pick another 30 feet up and drop that on that same row. So we actually end up with about 70 feet of hay in one row, and then you'll see the chopper on the lower left-hand picture. We chop it into trucks. We use 3 or 4 trucks, depending how far we have to haul it. And then Julie talked earlier about the bunker silos, and that would be the picture on the right. So that's those walls are 12 feet high, and our bunkers we have 7 bunkers, anywhere from 40 feet wide to 60 feet wide, and they're all 200 feet long and they're 12 feet high. And so we use one tractor, the big tractor on the left has a blade on the front of it, so the trucks dump the feed in front of the bunker, and then that tractor with the blade, incidentally, that tractor weighs about 50,000 pounds. And it's got, 8 big wheels and tires on it. So that pushes, it makes about 2 passes, and it pushes the feed up into the bunker. And then the reason for the second tractor, which you see also has a weight on the back, on the 3-point hitch. But combined, those 2 tractors pack that hay or corn silage and push all the air out of it. And I need to mention also, so we talked about the mower from Austria, the 3-point hitch from France. The merger is made in Italy.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, the question I got for Sandy is, I understand you're the queen of the the reaper there. Does it take any training to run that type of equipment?
It took me about 5 minutes to learn.
5 minutes.
Women learn quite quickly.
Oh. I almost say I'm sorry I asked. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you.
So I did another little graph on corn production and how things have changed. In the 1960s, Dad thought 85, 90 bushel to the acre was kind of a good crop. In the 80s, they were up to 120, and today, in an average year, we get 160 bushel to the acre. And so I asked the question, Dad, what's all changed? And a lot of it is genetics and the technology going into the seed. We have better planters. Dad talked about studies and trials, and there's so much of that going on at the university, and I think also at the manufacturing level of these implements. This year we're planting double rows. There's going to be 2 rows of corn that are really closely spaced, and that the latest field trials say that that's going to produce a higher yield than planting the single rows. So things are always changing, and they're always learning more. We also have herbicides and fertilizers that have also come a long way in aiding us in producing a bigger crop. So computers to manage cows kind of seems strange, right? What would a computer do to manage a cow? I brought some reports along that I'll just pass around. They probably don't make a whole lot of sense because it's just a lot of numbers and abbreviations, but our computer system has individual cow data, and these 4 or 5 pages stapled together are the information on one particular cow in our herd. Her number is 2539. She is 6 years and 7 months of age. She is in pen 4. If everybody's done what they're supposed to at the farm, she's in pen 4. Sometimes we have problems with that. But she is in her 4th lactation. She had her last calf on August 17th. She's been bred 3 times and is today confirmed pregnant with twins. How do you know that? I bet you were wondering. So we determine a cow is pregnant by every week the vet comes out and will do a check on cows that have been bred. And he uses an ultrasound. Different than the one I had when Haley was born, but an ultrasound nonetheless, and he can determine if there are 2 heartbeats in that cow, and so then we're kind of forewarned that there are twins coming, and we change the management of that cow. When she goes dry, she goes into a special pre-fresh pen that gives her kind of a little bit of a better diet and things to help her condition through that pregnancy. This report has, who she's bred to, who the sire of her calf is. All of her milk production is on one page. For each lactation, all of her test days when she went through, and every 40 days DHIA comes in and will test the cow's milk, how much milk they're producing, the quality of the milk, how much fat and protein is the milk. We do that on each individual cow, and that data is in the computer as well. But again, as I mentioned earlier, key for those computers is probably the report we rely on heaviest is called Down 20. And every morning we run this report, and any cow whose milk production is deviated by 20% from the previous, or from her average, will show up on this report. And so we will often walk out into the barn, into pen 10, looking for 2285 and checking her out. Does she look sick? Does she have a temperature? Is her manure the way it should be? All of those things that we use to determine if a cow is well or not, but it's the computer that allows us to keep track of and manage all those cows. And then we have lists. This is a vet list. So on Tuesday, Kelly will print this report, and it tells her exactly which cows to go and check. They've been bred, or they were acting funny, or We have problems with getting a cow bred. So these are the animals that need to be checked. There's similar reports for when it's hoof trimming day. The computer will tell us who needs to be checked out, which cows need to be vaccinated this week, next month, because it's all built into that schedule. And then also each day we get parlor reports. So it also helps me to manage our people. We have 11 full-time people that help us with the milking of the cows. And on this report, it tells me what time they started milking, what time they finished milking. It's contagious, Jerry.
I know.
It'll tell us how fast the cows milk out, which is an indicator of how well they did preparing the cows to milk. So the computer is a wonderful thing and really helps us with managing the dairy. Yes?
What
Name?
Well, Jacoby.
Thank you.
With pipeline milking and parlor, how do you get your DHIA sample?
Thank you. Okay, we have a question on the floor about sampling of particular cows, perhaps. Go right ahead, please.
I didn't mention it earlier, but our parlor has a basement. And in that basement is where actually the milk line runs and the vacuum line runs. And there's a meter down there, which is what detects how much milk that cow produced. And there's an ability to put a little cup and a sampler on it. So while that cow's milking, there's like a little finger with a slot in it that sticks into the milk line. And so a little bit of milk gets diverted into that cup in the basement. And then that gets sent away and tested. Does that answer your question?
So in other words, he's there all 3 milkings?
No, he's there for one milking, and then he relies on the computer captured data for the remaining to get the daily average.
I have a question, Julie. You see all over cities and everywhere, stores, video cameras. Do you have such things in your farm?
We do have a video system. Currently, it's just used in our parlor. Captures a couple different views of the parlor. I really use it mostly for training. We have a procedure. Cows like the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again every day. They want, if I go in to touch a cow to milk her, or Dad does, or Haley does, they want it to be the same every day. And so we teach that to our people in harvesting milk. And so if I see somebody's kind of deviated from that, the camera helps us in teaching them how things should be done.
I have another question. You were indicating that sometimes cows are skittish and trying to milk them the way you do. Do you have a training area for a fresh heifer or cow that they get accustomed to something ahead of time?
What we do is there's a group of cows, they're called steam up. And so 3 weeks before a cow has a calf, they go on what's called a steam up ration. Again, specially balanced, the right amounts of salts and everything else that cow needs when she has her calf to transition into the milking herd. And that group of cows, every Wednesday morning, we move up to our parlor. And so the heifers, the new moms that are coming into the parlor for the first time, will have walked through our parlor at least 3 times because she's entered that pen 3 weeks prior to calving. She'll see the parlor 3 times before she ever gets milked.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Dan and I talked a little bit today about harvesting of hay in the 1960s versus what we're doing today. And Dad said in the 60s, if he baled 10 acres of hay, it was a good day. That required, that process meant one person would go out and mow down the hay. They'd go through with the pull-type conditioner and condition the hay. Then when it got dry, somebody would run out with a tractor and a rake and they'd rake it. Then when it was finally ready to bale, two people would go out, one person on the tractor and one person on the wagon, and they'd bale up the hay, haul the hay back, and somebody loaded the elevator, and then there was another person in the mow. And I guess I mention this because going back a few slides, when you saw all that equipment and all those people harvesting hay, it seemed like a lot. But it really required a lot. Back in the 60s too, a lot of people doing a lot of different things. Today, on an average day, we will chop for haylage about 160 acres, and we've done up to 250 acres in a single day. Mom usually cuts down the hay. Somebody goes out to merge it. It's chopped. We usually have 2, sometimes 3 trucks on the road, and then the tractors to pack the bunker. So the size of the equipment has changed. The number of people to get the task done, I don't think really has. Certainly the dollars invested have. But the productivity really has changed considerably. Another big area for change is manure management. Grandpa in the early days didn't do a lot of manure management because the cows spread it themselves. Dad always says that, when it was a small dairy and you did daily haul, on a warm day, you would haul in the far corner of the back 40. But if it was cold or you were late for church, it was going right out next to the barn. Had to get going. Today, and I brought along, I know a couple of you guys have seen this before, but this is our nutrient management plan, and we develop one of these every year. Into this goes soil samples, so we, because of our size, we're considered a CAFO, a confined animal feeding operation, which means we have to have a permit by the Department of Natural Resources to operate because of our size. And so we fall under even some additional rules than, say, a smaller dairyman would. We're required to go out and sample our soils in 5 acre, every 5 acres needs to have a sample taken every 3 or 4 years. And so it's based on that soil sample. That gets combined with this analysis of the manure that's accumulated in our pit. That gets combined with the crop that's being planted and what that crop needs to grow. And so all of that is what goes into manure management for us, and this is kind of the book we use. We do this in conjunction with a crop consultant. He develops this for us. He does all the math and balances things out. That book also has sensitive areas outlined on it, areas that we need to avoid spreading, no beer. Charlie promised me beer and popcorn. So, it's much different today than it was years ago, and I would say it has to be. It's more cows, it's a complex system, and it has to be managed very carefully.
Julie, I
Jerry.
got a question pertaining to the manure and things like that. I see some farmers are hauling a certain amount onto a field in a middle area perhaps and allowing it to leach or dry out. Is that part of your process?
Yeah, that's probably what you see is called headland stacking.
Okay.
And that is usually a more solid manure. It's not what we spread on the field and
Okay.
in fall and work in.
Okay.
It's usually solid. And even at that, the DNR has regulations. It needs to be placed on a growing crop. The sites need to be approved by the DNR. I mean, we have sites that are approved, and we literally drove around the yard with the DNR girls in the car and said, this is what we're thinking, this is where we want to place it. It has to be on growing crops. It has to be a certain level of solids. It can't run away. The area needs to be observed, and you know, if there is sort of if it's draining away or it's pooling, that needs to be addressed and taken care of. And really, you're seeing that more often today because of new regulations. In Manitowoc County, our dairy, and I think it's because, you know, we're one of those large dairies, we can't spread manure in the months of February and March. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but my calf barn, I have a hard time putting my calves through 2 months of not being cleaned out. And that's, you know, primarily straw and you know, the what ends up in the straw, but it's not liquid manure.
That's right.
So that is becoming a more common practice, partly because of new regulations.
Got another question for you?
Sure.
With manure, you apply that first, and then if there's a need for more fertilizer, you apply that later on. Is there anything down the road where they would apply this all ahead of time to your manure before you put it on?
That's probably one I could defer to Dad. You know, I think we try to put on, in terms of manure, because it's there, it's bought, it's paid for.
Sure.
It needs a place to go. We try to put on what the crop's going to need.
Okay.
Now, if we think we've put on, you know, and typically we're putting on based on phosphorus. So we're measuring how much phosphorus is in and we're applying it.
Okay.
But corn, correct me if I'm wrong, needs more nitrogen than it does phosphorus. There's more phosphorus in the manure, so that's where that's why we're applying something later on.
Okay.
I don't know, would it ever make sense to put the nitrogen in the manure before? No, because it dissolves, or it's not always there. It can disappear.
Okay.
Nitrogen is...
Right ahead, please.
Jim Fitzgerald, just commenting a little bit about the idea of adding fertilizer to the manure. The nitrogen is very volatile, and so when it's applied, and that's one of many reasons why we incorporate the manure immediately after applying it. Once it's in the ground, it attaches and it stays there. But it's not all. The plant is not able to utilize all of it in the first year either. So that's why if we need additional nitrogen, we'll put that on generally when the corn crop is about 4 to 6 inches tall.
Okay.
And we'll give it a little shot of nitrogen at that point.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jim. Ooh.
That's a question I have for Grandpa Fitz. How did they handle that? And, well, dynamite, that's a good answer, because the one that I came up with this morning when I was pondering it was they left it, they planted a tree, and they cropped around it for years and years and years and years. But actually, that was last fall. Tyler was out working the field, and he said he was just about to fall asleep because he was we have GPS auto steer technology. So there is a box in the computer that talks to the satellite, And the first time you drive down the field, it's marking your course. And then the box also knows that your piece of equipment is, I don't know, 18, 25 feet wide. And so the next time you go over the 18 or the 25, it knows right where you should be because it's going to follow that same first path that you took. So Tyler's cruising down the field and, you know, about to doze off because he doesn't have anything to do because this tractor's steering itself. And he said all of a sudden it went, and I turned around, he said, and the whole earth was moving, and this was what was left. But our equipment today was actually, it apart from shearing 2 3/4-inch bolts, the piece of equipment was fine, but it picked it up to this point, right out of the ground. I stood in front of that with my arms spread, and it was fingertip to fingertip, so it is a big rock.
What did you do with it?
So we went down with a chain and a big heavy loader, and we loaded it up, and it is sitting down in some tall grass at my place, and I think I want to take it and get Soaring Eagle Dairy with a big old eagle engraved on it and park it out front, but
Wow.
we'll see if that happens.
Not this year.
Not this year. And though so many things have changed over the years, but some things haven't, when flipping through the scrapbooks and the newspaper clippings, I found it ironic that Ronnie Walk is picking up milk for us here on the left in the 80s. And this is him at our current facility, and this picture was taken within the last, I don't know, in the 2000s. So 20 years later, Ronnie Walk is still picking up and hauling milk for us. And that's the end of my presentation. So now we have question and answers.
Okay, this one. Got a gentleman here who will identify himself, please. Go right ahead.
I'm Willard Matthias. I would like to know how many gallons of milk or how much milk you haul in one day.
Okay, thank you. We have a question on the floor for Julie. Go right ahead, please.
We have 2 bulk storage tanks for our milk. One is up and down like a silo, and the other is vertical, kind of runs along the ground. And they each hold 50,000 pounds, and it takes about 14 hours to fill one of those. So we're probably about 80,000 pounds of milk shipped a day.
Because when we had our dairy, at the most we used in a day was about 40,000 pounds of milk, which about 24,000 went into cheese and the rest went into bottles. So you could supply us with that milk, that we'd have enough.
And how many cows were supplying you with the 40,000?
We had way over 100 farms.
Okay,
and,
okay.
And well, some were like 12, 15 cans of milk. Some were 1 or 2, you know, that varied.
Mm-hmm.
But what gets me is when we were in business, that there were so many farms that if Mom, Pa, and the son and his wife both would be on the farm, and they'd run about 4 to 5 cans of milk during the summer. During the winter time, they'd have 2, and they both made a living, both families.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, this one young farmer, he bought himself another farm and paid cash. Now, I mean, they always say that farmers weren't making any money, but now here's just a small farm, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they were made enough to buy another farm. And this was in Liberty. I know those people who, well, it was Guernsey Milk customer too yet. But there was a lot of farms like that were never had more than 5, 6 cans of milk. But 2 families living off of that.
And I think, you know, my grandpa is a testament. You know, he, without a father, managed his mother and his siblings through that. And it was I'm sure 1 can of milk with the 15 cows a day, but the 100 chickens and the 2 hogs and the horses. It was all of that combined that sustained dairy for his family back in that day. I appreciate that.
I got another question for Julie. Electricity is important to your farm. Do you have anything on usage or any efficiency situations with that and so forth? And if you have a bill that you might talk about, you can mention it if you wish.
You know, from a kilowatt or a megawatt or a watt standpoint, I couldn't even venture to guess where that is. You know, I think our dairy is no different than we are in our homes, all of us. You know, if the lights aren't on, we turn them off, right, girls? Busted them just today, this morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, I walk in, all the lights are on. You know, it's the same way at our dairy. We do things like the milk pump that transfers the milk from our basement pipeline up to that bulk tank is variable speed. And so, you know, when there's 4 cows on in the parlor, it runs very slow or not at all. But when we get, you know, a really efficient period where there are lots of cows and lots of milk going in, at that point the pump will run at a higher speed. Same thing with our vacuum pump. You know, we don't want to pay for electricity that maybe we don't need, so we try to be as conservative as we can. Even from the point of, you know, the lights that we install, we take a look at what's more efficient and will save us in energy costs in the end.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. I have a young lady. She'd like to indicate her name first of all, please.
Audrey Erdl. I was wondering, what do you use for backup when the power goes out? Because I know I worked at the co-op for 22 years, and I think it was in the 70s when we had the ice storms, and we were out of electricity for a whole week.
Okay, thank you.
We have a standby generator that runs on diesel, and it will automatically detect a power outage and will start all on its own. In addition to that, this kind of goes back to your energy question. We also have what's called interruptible power from Wisconsin Public Service. And so during peak demand for them, usually it's in the summer months on really hot days, they will shut the power off to our farm and we'll run on generator. We get a better rate for electricity for doing that, but it sort of lessens the demand during those really peak usage times for public service.
If you have a question or advice from the floor.
Mom says that our electric bill is about $5,000 a month.
Oh.
You know, and I wanted to say this earlier, and I didn't know if I should, but I just want to take a poll. It is still on, right? The rock merger, which was made in Italy. Anybody want to venture the guess on the price tag?
More
No, not
more
quite.
than $50,000. 75,000.
More than that.
200,000.
It was 130.
130,000.
And you know, that's really the fact that we do all of our cropping with our uncles means that we're running that over probably 25 or 3,000 acres combined between the two farms, and that's, you know, it's not all hay in one year, but in the rotation, there's quite a few acres that this machine services. And the other option for us was a lot less costly, but we felt that this was a much more durable machine and a better investment for us.
Okay. We got a gentleman here.
Yeah, Charlie Bauer, I got a question. That machine up there now, will that machine wear out or will it become obsolete before its lifetime?
We got a gentleman here. He can try and help us answer one.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
Will the machine wear out or become obsolete?
Yeah.
All of the above.
Boy.
Good question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we got a question on the floor and pertaining to how many years you guesstimate you will have that piece of equipment?
I probably didn't answer that very well, Charlie, but, you know, I would hope that we would get at least 10 or 15 years out of that. And I'm sure that technology is gonna change real rapidly on that. That's a whole new concept in moving hay. Prior to that, we used rakes. One of the problems with rakes is you keep kicking the hay across the field and you pick up stones. So this machine lifts it up onto a belt which carries it across. And these machines have only been out, you know, like probably 4 to 6 years. And they're making some pretty good strides in improving them.
Thank you. Okay, we got a final question maybe at this point in time. Go right ahead, please.
Fred Jacoby. It's not that simple. I got a couple of questions, but they're quick. I'll give you the questions and you can respond. First of all, I was wondering where you sold your milk to. And then when you talked about how much milk you had, I'm interested in a semi-truck. I don't know how much a semi-truck holds. And do you know what the mower costs? I was wondering about that a long while.
Our milk is shipped to Land O'Lakes, and I think I heard once that Grandpa Fitz was a founding member of Lake to Lake. So Lake to Lake became Land O'Lakes. But we've kind of been Land O'Lakes people all our lives. The milk semis that you see are usually 6,000 gallons, and that's the same as 50,000 pounds, roughly. The question on the mower was much less expensive.
I think by the time we bought the hitch and the PTO and the mower, probably around 65 or 70,000.
65 or 70,000. You know, but it doesn't drive. You still need something to drive with both of those.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Invite that if anyone would like to come and visit and see, have a tour, you're welcome. Just our phone number is on the brochure. Give a call and we'd love to walk you through and show you what it looks like and smells like and everything up close and personal.
That's one thing that hasn't changed though.
That hasn't changed. They still smell. They still make the best, most delicious and nutritious product, I think, though, that can be made. So
sure.
You gotta take the good with the bad, I guess.
Do we get a ride around them?
You get
I have to walk in all these barns.
Yeah. Dad's getting me a golf cart. At your suggestion, right? You suggested we have a golf cart, and we'll take you around, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
I have a comment yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gabby's got a comment.
I did tour their farm once, and it did not smell, not like other farms. It was very excellent, I must say.
And that depends on the day, you know, and the, you know, the humidity, the atmospheric pressure, whatever. There are days that are really good, and there are days that are not so good.
Okay, we're not going to do our normal closing where we ask for introductions again, but I think we should give Julie a big hand for her wonderful job. She said she wasn't going to talk to me tonight because I didn't offer to go out and help her pick stones this morning.
We pulled in, and the drapes closed, and the door locked, and...
We don't have a particular subject matter for next month, but we're planning on having a meeting here, and if there's any other suggestions that we can get from the floor here, other topics that we should cover. We've been going now a little over 9 years, and we covered some fantastic stuff, and we wanted to do a modern farm here one time. I still like to get a farmer that was farming from the 40s and before, with maybe with horses and the different sizes of equipment and things like that, and the amount of milk they produce and the crops and all that. And does Kathy have anything else she want to add?
I just want to thank the Fitzgerald family for the wonderful presentation, just absolutely excellent.
And
It was my pleasure.
And if you need a library card, you can get a library card downstairs to check out their DVDs. and they're good at UW Sheboygan, UW Manitowoc, I believe, and Fox Valley, and they're good at about 9 or 10 different places there. So I guess we'll see you all next month, and Kathy will be sending out a card. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.